In Chapter 2, we talk about how we perceive ourselves and others. We'll examine the perception process, perception of self, and perception of others. And how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive others affects how we communicate. We'll examine the process, and when we look at those elements, we're going to focus on the sender-receiver in the transactional model that we covered in Chapter 1. We'll also look at the intrapersonal setting, the self-talk that you do. Do our perceptions match others? Sometimes. Sometimes they don't. I like this quote, "There is no truth, there is only perception." Is there an objective truth in all circumstances? Some would argue no. And you may have heard the similar assertions before. For example, for many, perception is reality. Okay, so how do we deal with all of the information that comes our way? We are just bombarded with stimuli. So what we do is we select, we organize, and we interpret. So we choose to pay attention to information that meets our biological and psychological needs. We're more likely to pay attention to information that piques our interest. And if something, we're likely to see something that meets our expectations. And if it doesn't meet our expectation, you might dismiss it. Your brain just kind of disregards it. Then we organize. So our brain simplifies what we see and tries to make some sense of it. It tries to use simplicity and a pattern so it makes sense of complex stimuli by relating them to things it already recognizes. So it tries to simplify it or put it into a pattern. And then there's interpretation. So you see things and your brain assigns meaning to it. And we'll get into more of a discussion of stereotype, prejudice, and discrimination in a few minutes or in the next video. Now, all of this contributes to our frame of reference. Now, I'm going to show a few slides, and I don't want you to think too hard, but take a look at these slides and jot down the first thing that you think of when you see these images. Okay, what did you see? Did you see a younger woman turning her head, looking away? Or did you see an older woman looking down? Either way, it's right. Both of those images are there, but what did your brain see first? Here's another one. Okay, what do you see? Do you see a vase? Or do you see two faces looking at each other? And here's a third. Do you see good or do you see evil? Again, your brain, wants to see something that it expects, and it disregards things that that doesn't hold your interest, or it's not what you're expecting. Okay, in the perception process, there are two things that happen. We call it dual processing. So you have automatic processing, or heuristics, which is where your brain takes a shortcut. They're just simple shortcuts you use to make decisions, and they help us if we don't have time to make a decision really comprehensively. So sometimes when you have a gut feeling, you're using emotions for making snap decisions, though you can't usually tell exactly what rule or heuristic your intuition is using. An educated guess is a heuristic that allows a person to reach a conclusion without doing a whole bunch of research. With an educated guess, a person considers what they've observed in the past and applies that history to a new situation where a more definite answer hasn't been determined yet. Then conscious processing, this is the deliberation. This is where you really think about something to try to reach a conclusion. It's slower and more deliberate. You're really working through different considerations, maybe applying different concepts and different models and weighing them all before you come up with a decision. Okay, are you reading this? Only smart people can read this. I couldn't believe that I could actually understand what I was reading. So this is your brain, and it's making a shortcut. So these words are missing, sometimes they're missing vowels, sometimes they're missing consonants, but your brain is able to read it. That's a shortcut. All right, now, take a moment and count every F in the following text. Okay, how many did you find? Did you find 3 or 4? Or did you count all 6? Most people don't get all 6 the first time they read it. And the reason is that when you are reading the sentence, you're thinking about it as you're reading it, when you get to the word of, your brain doesn't process that as an F because it's an OV sound, of. It's not off, right? So your brain, when I ask you to count it, your brain just disregards it. Okay, that's the end of part 1, and we will continue chapter 2 with the next video.